Getting the Root Cause with Dr. Fong, everyone. This is a little change. We're doing this podcast over Zoom today, and I think it's both of our first times doing this. But I have Eric Bergstrom here, and he is the son of the founder of Xtrema Cookware. And we are getting to the root cause today about toxicity in your kitchen. And this is, we're going to talk all about all the toxins that leach out of your cookware, especially things like your nonstick, even your copper, your cast iron cookware, aluminum cookware are all going to leach heavy metals and other types of chemicals like PFCs into your food and then wreak a lot of havoc there. So we went on a search to find the best cookware, and we ended up with Xtrema Cookware, which is a 100% ceramic cookware. Is that correct, Eric?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Extrema and your journey, Extrema's journey to creating these awesome pots and pans.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So about 16 years ago, my father, Rich Bergstrom, who always kind of had an idea in his back pocket about creating a ceramic cookware that could sustain stovetop temperatures. He set out to make something that was both sustainable, non-toxic, and worry-free for the consumer, but still put out the kind of performance that you want from your cookware, which is, being able to do multiple different things with that, whether that's going into the oven or going on the stovetop or putting it under the broiler or putting it in the fridge. So he kind of used his experience and some of his connections to try to work and design a product line and a formula that would be able to do this just through about 3 or 4 years of hard research and working with a bunch of experts in the field to be able to craft what is now Xtrema Cookware.
So tell me, because I know there are other products out there that are not 100% ceramic.
Correct.
Are you guys the only company that makes 100% ceramic, or are there other competitors that are out there that do this too?
So there's another company in France that's been around for a while, I think 100 plus years, called Emile Unray. But our cookware, just formula wise, is different. It can take higher temperatures, I would say, than them. But for people that are in the UK, that's a company that we say, hey, they're safe to buy from, and we support them. But I would say our cookware is different, not just in design, but also in durability and versatility, and just what it has to offer through and through.
And how would you say using 100% ceramic will differ from, ceramic coated, pot and pans?
Well, I think that's an interesting, it's a really important conversation, a distinction to make, because I think when we were coming on the scene, there was obviously a lot of the things that were happening with Teflon and PTFE and PFOA. And as that started to kind of be removed from the market, when PFOA was kind of deemed like this is a big no-no, and the government started to get involved and say, we shouldn't create this anymore for things that are going to be in contact with food on cookware. And there were these alternatives that were made pretty quickly after that were called ceramic. And I think as we were coming onto the scene as a 100% ceramic offering, there was also this kind of alternative that was being marketed the same as our cookware. And so I think something that we fight on a day-to-day, and we fight to educate, especially on our website and through social media, is that our product is 100% ceramic. And we feel like we have to say that because especially, when you look online and when you look on Instagram ads and Facebook ads, there's no qualifier with these companies who have ceramic coated cookware. They just say it's ceramic cookware. And so I think there's a confusion that consumers have when they say, well, what do you mean 100% ceramic? I thought that I do have 100% ceramic. Mm-hmm. And we kind of have to walk them through, no, there's something underneath the ceramic. The ceramic coating is really a really thin layer of ceramic type materials mixed in with other kind of glues, polymers, dyes, fillers that is sprayed on top of metal cookware. Mm-hmm. Ours is 100% ceramic, meaning like if you drop it, you might break it.
Yeah.
If you cut it in half, the whole thing would be ceramic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. I mean, we do a lot of customer interaction, especially as, working in the brand engagement side and the social media side. That's something that we have to continually say over and over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so important to differentiate that there could not be more different. There's nothing that's going to come off. It's
Right.
non-scratch. It's non-reactive. There's nothing that's going to chip or flake into your food. These ceramic coatings made in response to what was, kind of some pretty heavy government bans,
Mm-hmm.
uh, were made in direct response and have kind of become a part of a market that I think is still metal cookware,
Yeah.
just with kind of like
Mm-hmm.
a shiny coating over it. And so that's something that we try to engage with our customer base all the time on.
Yeah. Well, I've tried pretty much every type of cookware out there in exploring options for my patients, and I got one of the ceramic coated pans, and used it for a while, and this is like a couple of years ago, and um, I think I only used it for a couple months, and it started to actually chip off,
Yeah.
and then I just threw it away. I mean, it wasn't that expensive a pan, so I really didn't care that much. So like, okay, I'm just throw it away. And
Yeah.
I think I was one of those people, and I think this was actually before I became a naturopathic doctor. Like, oh, okay, I'm being healthy, and it was probably during that whole lawsuit and everything. And I just remember it chipping super quickly, and then I was like, oh, I don't want to use this anymore. And then I think I switched to stainless steel,
Right.
and which stainless steel has its own issues, which it can leak, what is it, like nickel and
Mm-hmm.
chromium and other still heavy metals into our
Yes.
food. I do think it's a better option than your nonstick, or but that's why we were kind of just still on a hunt to find something. And using the Extrema pan, it almost feels like I'm cooking with like a mug, like like a
Yeah. Yeah.
ceramic
Yeah. Yeah.
mug.
Yeah.
And it's really cool how it heats up. And
Yeah.
I would say it definitely heats up differently. Like, it doesn't heat up as quickly. Like, it takes a little
Mm-hmm.
longer to heat up. But I mean, it heats up pretty well once it gets there. And
Yes.
have tried a couple different things, and you really do feel like it's just ceramic. Like, you can
Mm-hmm.
feel that there's no metal in there, and you really do feel if you drop it, it's gonna break.
Yeah.
So tell me what the differences are from a user point of view, from using, Extrema versus another type of pot and pan. Tell me about the usability of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think we have some similar suggestions for our customer base, when we say, heat on low, and um, make sure you give enough time for it to heat up. You see some of these same restrictions put on, ceramic coated cookware, and those restrictions are different because the coating is actually sprayed on at that temperature. And so what a lot of people don't understand is that while we have those restrictions on our cookware, just for a user sense, to say, hey, this is what's going to be most effective for actually cooking your food. It's not necessarily a restriction for how much heat our cookware can actually take. Our cookware is fired 3 times at 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Most metals, um, like toxic metals like lead, it melts at like 700 degrees Fahrenheit. Our cookware, when you heat it up high or fast, it's not necessarily that it's going to emit anything or leach anything or affect anything or the coating or glaze. It's just simply that in order to effectively use your cookware in ceramic, you heat it up slow, and then it retains the heat over the long term, which is why you don't have to keep kind of adjusting like you would
Mm-hmm.
with some metal cookware. Adjust it up, adjust it down. You can kind of keep it on low, and it'll continue to retain the heat. But that's also because it's a fully ceramic product, meaning that when you take ceramic, you can heat it up to an unbelievable amount of extreme temperature, whether that's really cold or really hot. Um, but if you're doing it all at once, that's very different than doing it disproportionately.
What would happen if you did that? I guess I'm wondering, because you get, when you buy an Extreme cookware, you get this whole list of
Right.
do's and don'ts, and it kind of scares you. It's like, okay, what's going to happen if I do these don'ts? And I mean, so I just don't do them. But I'm just wondering, like, if you take it from hot and then you put it in cold water? What actually happens?
So that is really just kind of a precautionary measure on our end and just for the consumer, because as much as, our 10-year warranty for thermal cracking is awesome and our breakage policy is awesome, meaning if there's a thermal crack, meaning non-user error related to something like that, you're transferring it over from hot to cold, or from
Mm,
cooking into heat, that shouldn't happen with the durability of our ceramic and to the standards we made our product. And so if that happens within 10 years, we'll send you a new product, no questions asked. um, Personal breakage or user error breakage, we'll give you 50% off that same product. So if you want to repurchase that product, we'll give you a 50% discount off retail. So for people that are worried about that, we always say, hey, listen, we have a 10-year warranty. We've been around for almost 16 years now. So we actually, I have an original 10-inch tradition skillet that I'm cooking with that's 13 years old. And so those are just some precautionary measures that the user can take. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do that. I think we've all done that. Just directly clean something or heat it up really high from, a cold room temperature to,
mm-hmm.
a really hard boil or things like that. And our product is designed to be able to take that by the nature of the materials that we've used and the formula that we've used. But that's just some precautions that the
Yeah.
customer can take.
A ton of my patients are like worried about all of those precautions and worried
Right.
that it's going to break and, all this stuff. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, is to just kind of pick your brain and really hear about what would actually happen and how much does that happen. And so I'm glad you shared that, because I think that hopefully will alleviate some of the concerns that some of my patients have about those issues.
Yeah, there's been instances where I've dropped a skillet from shoulder high onto like a rug, and like it didn't break.
Hmm.
And so obviously we don't suggest that. Obviously we don't say like, hey, it's cookware, you can bang around. But
Yeah.
um, I mean, if you drop cast iron from shoulder length, it can break.
Right. Right.
And so there are, when that going in, like this is an investment product. It's a product obviously it's more higher end on the price scale, but it's a product that is not disposable. And so something that I think is important to recognize is, yeah, you may spend $130 for a skillet, but you're supposed to have that for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that math kind of out over the years, it's year over year. It's not a huge investment, as you might spend $40 on a ceramic coated pan, but
Right.
the new coatings, they're 15% as durable as PTFE, which was made to last 8 years. And so 15% is about 1 to 2 year range. Most of those ceramic coatings, no matter how new and fresh and effective they claim to be, will leave you wanting a new set of cookware
Mm-hmm.
within 2
Yeah.
years. And then not to mention, where's the coating going into your
Yeah.
food, into your body. But also
And then
just the
the
performance
metals
factor.
underneath are
Yeah.
leaking into the food more than likely
Well,
too.
and that's so important to recognize, because it's still, with daily use, going to wear within
Mm-hmm.
2 years. And then underneath typically is not, you're not talking about, surgical stainless underneath. You're talking about aluminum. You're
Yeah.
talking about metals that are great conductors of heat, which is why they're used, but that are directly under the surface. And you're talking about the width of a fingernail is these coatings, even if
Mm-hmm.
they're, triple layered, um, it's still not that thick. And so underneath that, you scratch that, and then you expose to things like aluminum, things like
Mm-hmm.
nickel, things like
Yeah.
even stainless, that can leach other things into your food that you don't want. But yeah, it's so important that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people don't understand what's actually underneath some of these coatings, which is just as bad as the thing that you're trying to avoid by
Yeah.
not buying certain metal cookware.
Mm-hmm. And then is it because there's metal underneath that those ceramic coated pans, like for example, if I was going to cook eggs, I feel like there is more of a non-stick ability, a little more than the Extrema pan.
Yep.
And you kind of went through like the reasons people might return your Extrema pan is because they want to cook eggs and pancakes, and it doesn't really, I wouldn't call it non-stick, but when I cook eggs, it might stick a little, but actually it coming off is super easy. A lot easier than my stainless steel pan, actually, like so much easier.
Yeah.
But is that because there is that metal layer and there's more heat conduction or something? Or is it the coat that makes those a little more nonstick? So like, for example, my boyfriend came over and we cooked with my Extrema, and then he has a coated ceramic
Mm-hmm.
at home, and he said that when he cooks eggs, it comes off a little bit easy. It's like, it is
Yeah.
kind of more nonstick.
Right.
What is the reason for that?
Well, it's the actual coating itself. PTFE, polytetrafluoroethylene, was designed to be able to be sprayed onto surfaces, whether that's a Gore-Tex jacket or whether that's your cookware, that would kind of repel all of those things that typically in cooking, you kind of have that give and take when you're trying to heat it up to the right temperature, use the correct oil, use the correct temperature, and it kind of takes all the guessing work out of it. And that kind of paired with a really good conductor of heat, which would be aluminum, can kind of get you those results. And I think with our cookware, the learning curve is understanding how to heat it and how to
Mm.
effectively heat it, which is typically, depending on your stove, there's, obviously glass, electric coil. It's going to be different for each one, but typically low, meaning like below 6, is where our cookware is going to live. And when you pair that with the right oil and with the right timing, meaning you're heating your pan up first, you're putting room temperature oil or fat in, you're adding the food directly after that. Once you kind of learn that learning curve, it becomes very much second nature. We used to cook on the same things that everybody used to cook on, and just crank it up, and you cook an egg in 30 seconds and then you're done.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing that we had to learn changing over to Extrema when it first started to become obviously a product line and a brand was just understanding it may take me 3 minutes to cook my egg, but this is why you're investing in your health this way, because it's going to be free of toxins.
Yeah.
It's going to not add any sort of metallic flavor or taste. And it's going to get the same result. It just might take me a minute or two longer. And so when we say things on our website, like changing the way people cook one home at a time, that's really part of the education process, which is helping people to understand you may not be able to cook your meal in 2 minutes. It
Mm-hmm.
may add
Yeah.
some time into the cooking process, but it's worth it in the end, especially if
Yeah.
you're investing in your health and something that's 100% worry free.
And so it really is a decision to say, I'm choosing my health over, cooking an egg in 1 minute or whatnot. And that's what I try to educate my patients and my listeners about, is that, first of all, things like buying organic and non-GMO, and now buying these more expensive pots and pans that you might need to take a little extra care of. It's totally worth it in the end, because then,
Absolutely.
you're not now bioaccumulating toxins in your body, which down the line is going to end you up in the hospital with a lot more, hospital bills than it probably costs to spend a little more on your pot and pan and organic food and non-GMO food, etc.
Yeah, and I think especially with what the studies that we're seeing with chemicals and metal toxicity, and people that are trying to detox, whether that's from metal fillings in their mouth, or through different kind of medical devices, or through cookware, or through supplementation. We're kind of discovering all this, and a lot of these things share symptoms with things that are fairly common. And so there's a lot of people that a lot of metal related or toxicity related things go completely undiagnosed because
Yeah.
they share common symptoms. And I think that's the thing that we encourage people, especially with cookware, is when you get into this kind of thinking, to kind of rid your pantry, rid your products, rid your household cleaners of toxins, it can be very, very overwhelming to think, oh my gosh, I have to literally get rid of everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have to spend
Like
all of this
overhaul
money.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think something we encourage people to just kind of take a deep breath and say, listen, one product at a time,
Mm-hmm.
really think through
Yeah.
what you can afford.
Hmm.
But with something like cookware, we think it's so important because one, it's so not talked about when it comes
Hmm.
to the things that could be harmful in the cookware that you use. But two, typically it's something that you're using every single day, 3 times a day, and maybe even more. Um, and so for things like that, for things like skincare and makeup and food and cookware, those things are the most important because of the things that we're using every single day. There's still marketing that happens, and there's still kind of products that are built up to be healthy that really aren't. And so I
Right.
think that's kind of
Right.
our fight, is to say, listen, whether you buy or not is okay with us, but we just want you to understand the difference
Hmm.
between what you are buying and how it is different. And yeah, it's so important to have that conversation continually, because there's a lot to know in this
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. And so I have a program that I put together for my patients. It's called Truly Transform. And what we do is I try to break it out like on a weekly basis. So,
Mm,
okay, this week we're going to focus on your kitchen, and we're going to focus on what you're buying, for food. And we're going to focus on your pots and pans. And we're going to focus on, even the utensils you use to cook with and all of that. And then the next week we're going to do your bathroom. And
hmm.
then the following week we're going to do your laundry room. And my hope is that that makes it a little bit easier to get through this
Yeah,
process,
yeah,
because I think it can be super overwhelming. Like, you start to then look at everything in your home and you're like, oh my God, I am filling my body with toxins.
yeah,
Like, it's no wonder my back hurts and I have headaches. And I think even just changing all of that out, a lot of my patients will already start to feel better, just from doing simple things like that. So I think you're right. And I think it's awesome that you guys have created this, option for people that is truly non-toxic,
yeah,
where there's no metal whatsoever. And I think you're right. I think those, couple little things where you have to learn how to actually use the pan and get
hmm,
kind of accustomed to it. It's almost like just like riding a bike. After that, it's just super
right,
easy. So I agree with you there. And what I'll tell people is, if they're thinking that it's so expensive and they can't change out all their pots and pans, what I'll say is, okay, buy one that you can use mostly. And
hmm,
then if you need to cook, something else that doesn't fit in that pan or whatnot, then go ahead and use that for just, 1 out of 20 times. Then that's better. And then eventually you can go ahead and, switch everything out.
right,
But that is, I think, a barrier is the cost. But I
right,
think my experience was I bought the coated, ceramic coated. It lasted me like 9 months or something, and then I had to throw it out.
yep,
So, I think you're right, is over, if I'm able to keep my Extrema for like years and years and years, then you're actually saving money in the long run. And I
yeah.
think it's the same for everything in this space that's going to be a little bit more expensive, or maybe sometimes a lot more expensive, but completely worth it in the end, especially when you just kind of think about the health implications.
Being able to have products individually as well within our line that are kind of one-stop shopping is something that we pride ourselves in, because we know that to purchase 12 pieces is not going to be in everybody's budget. But for the people that just want to buy one and invest in one and keep that for a while, you can get so many different uses out of that, whether that's taking it on the grill, putting it in the oven, using it on the stove top, even freezing. We just froze some oat protein bars in our tenants the other day.
Hmm.
It's super versatile.
Yeah. Well, I think this is such an important topic, because I think it's something that, I think you're right, is not talked about. And then I think people think they're buying super healthy
Right.
cookware, and actually it's probably leaching things into their food anyways. And so I think this topic is really important. And basically, in my practice, every chronic symptom and every chronic illness can boil down to toxicity.
Hmm.
And these hidden toxins that are possibly in our cookware and just in all these different places in our home, can be one of the causes. Now, is it the only cause? Not usually, not always. Like, normally there are multiple toxins that I find in
Right.
patients, where aluminum and nickel and, the things that we might find in our cookware are just some of those toxins. But I think the important thing is where we can do this, we need to remove that exposure from our life. So I think this is really important stuff. And I think some of the ways you might know, like really clear, like if you wear like fake jewelry, if you're a woman and you wear fake jewelry and that jewelry irritates you, it's usually has nickel in there, then that could actually mean that you have heavy metals that are overloaded in your system. So for example, for me, I used to have like mercury, nickel, lead, I mean, all these metals in my system, which
Yeah.
is why I became a naturopathic doctor. I had eczema all over my body. At that time, if I wore fake jewelry, I would get a huge rash. Nowadays, because I've detoxed all that stuff out of me. If I do, which I usually don't, but if I do, I actually don't get that same response because I'm not overloaded with these heavy metals. So that's one sign that I actually, patients will tell me that. I'm like, oh, okay, we got to check your heavy metals.
Mhm.
And nickel is one of those ones that's found in stainless steel and, some of these other ceramic coated pans that
Mhm.
then have nickel, aluminum, other things underneath. Um,
Yeah.
and then one other thing I wanted to talk about was just comparing glass cookware. Because I know that's another option when I tell my patients about the 100% ceramic. I say, okay, well, what do you think about glass? Do you have any thoughts there?
So glass and glass ceramic, there's a couple of, I think a very popular one is Visions, that can go on the stove, can go in the oven, and are non-toxic. Um, I think the thing with glass, I think what would differentiate between ours is some of the extreme temperatures, the durability, some of the versatility you might be able to not to do to the extreme that you would be able to do with ceramic, but definitely an option that would be safe. With glass, you might have a little bit more of a struggle, I would say, with just the cooking process, and that differs consumer to consumer. There's obviously a learning curve for whatever you use. I think the most important thing with glass is that um, for those companies that are producing it, that are putting it through the ringer with testing, producing a product that is 100% non-toxic.
I've heard that you can't do as extreme of a temperature
Correct.
as
And
the ceramic.
ceramic, as far as just when you're talking about how ceramic heats, ceramic kind of uses far infrared energy, meaning it's cooking the things that are in the pan from the inside and the outside at the same time, but it's also retaining heat in a way that other materials just don't.
Yeah, cool. Well, this has been great. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you wanted to share with our listeners about the Extrema Cookware?
I would say I think the importance for especially the customer, and we love our customers. Our customers are fantastic, and most of our customers come unbelievably well read and well researched. I think for the consumer, and for the potential customer that's listening, I think the most important thing is to research.
Mhm.
Um, Start to listen to healthcare professionals, people like yourself, people in the non-toxicity space, naturopathic doctors, people that are really looking to kind of get to the root cause, which is why you've named the podcast this, um,
Yeah.
and really understand what are some of those things that you need to look out for when you're actually purchasing. We see that sometimes new and exciting does not always mean healthy and non-toxic. And so that's the one thing that I would definitely leave your listeners with is just do your research, even if it takes time. I think it's really important for you as a consumer to understand what you're actually buying and what that means for your body and for your health. And then I think the last thing would be just take your time, being able to rid your kitchen, your pantry, the products that you use of toxins. I think is just an important journey for everybody to go on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love your warranty and your guarantee and all that. I think it's a really great. It just kind of shows how much you do care about your customers, and then also just how much you guys believe in your product. So I think that's really great. And if you guys are wanting to try out an Extrema pan, there is a discount code that is Dr. Fong 10. So DRF as in Frank, ONG 10, and that's for 10% off your purchase. The other thing that's really fun is Extrema has been so gracious to do a giveaway with us. And so when we launch this podcast, we are going to be launching a giveaway on our Instagram. And that is for a 9.5-inch flared skillet.
Yes.
And yeah, so that's super fun. I think that's the one I have, actually. I think that's the one I have. So when we launch this podcast, definitely check out my Instagram at drfong.nd. And then, Eric, where can we reach you guys? Where can listeners find you?
So you can find us obviously on all social. We're Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest at Xtrema_Cookware. Or Xtrema Cookware. Xtrema.com is our website. We have tons of articles on there. We have all of our product testing on there. We have a couple of pages, how to use Why Ceramic, where we kind of detail the history, not just of our company, but of actually ceramics, and why it is so beneficial to use ceramic in your kitchen at home. And we'll be running some pretty awesome discounts that are right now 25% off. If you use Dr. Fung's discount code, you'll get an extra 10% off of that. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to our support line or send us a DM on Instagram. We'll be happy to connect to you and answer all your questions.
Cool. Well, all of that sounds really great. And thank you so much for joining me today on Getting You the Root Cause. It was a great conversation. I learned a lot too, and I hope the listeners did as well too. And everyone get your Extrema, because I really love it. And I think it's a really important and easy thing you can do for your health, that it's something you're probably cooking with, as you said, 1 to 3 times a day. And
Right.
that is, potential toxicity leaking into your system. And you can change all that by just buying the right pan.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been
All right.
awesome.
Eric.